Welcome to the second devlog of my multiplayer PvP action game WarSpawn, which you can wishlist on Steam, and I'll leave the link below. In this video, I'll recap the combat system V2 progress, how I went about implementing a Lyra light animation system in my game, and then what's next for WarSpawn in 2025. If you watched my previous devlog, I outlined the next milestone was going to be finalizing the combat system, which is exactly what I set out to do, beginning with prototyping different combat designs. Luckily, I quickly zeroed in on which direction I wanted to go in, and using some Bloodborne inspiration, I implemented a weapon transformation system where each weapon can be switched between two modes, typically a melee mode and a range mode. To encourage weapon transformations during combat, I separated the resource costs for each mode. Melee mode attacks will cost stamina, and range mode attacks will cost a new attribute, energy. To make things more interesting, I made energy regenerate slower than stamina to maintain an emphasis on melee combat, but then also gave melee hits an energy leech ability, which recovers a portion of energy on hit. I'm hoping this will give the combat a natural rhythm as players switch modes strategically based on their situation and resource management. With a clear design to move forward with for the combat system, I wanted to work from a clean slate, so I began adding a new weapon, the Slasher. As excited as I was to begin designing the abilities for the new weapon, there was one important problem to solve first.
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it.
Yeah, buddy. The question is, though, in games, what makes movement enjoyable to players, and as developers, how do we implement it? In a 3D action game, I think the pinnacle achievement you can obtain as a developer is when your players find themselves in a sort of flow state. In my experience, this happens primarily when all the context of what you're doing is so frictionless that your mind is able to directly immerse itself in the actions of your character on screen. When thinking about how to achieve this in my game, I boiled it down into three main points. Responsive inputs, where you have minimal latency between a button press and visual feedback on screen. Believable movement, so your character looks like it's doing the thing you want it to do. And high challenge, where your brain is making many decisions very quickly. While I was prototyping the combat designs, I quickly realized that to improve on these first 2 points, I need to revisit my animation system first. And finalizing the movement system first felt like the right approach, as it would inform the combat animations and abilities. When I began the project, and as with most things game dev, I had no idea what I was doing when it came to animations. So I did what any slothy game dev would do. I cobbled together something that barely worked and wrapped it in a big to-do comment. This original system was pretty basic, very rigid, and extremely limiting. And it also held references to each weapon's animations, which was simply chosen based on a big switch statement depending on the weapon set on the character. I knew I need a smarter way of scaling new weapons and corresponding animations, and a more advanced locomotion system to add more fluidity to the character movement. But without the experience to build what I needed myself, I had a few decisions to make. Where would I go for solutions, and how much time did I want to spend? Long story short, I decided to bite the bullet and do some R&D. So the first thing I did was look at the sample projects I had downloaded, and I saw that Lyra was just sitting there waiting for me to open. Boy, did I not know what I was getting into. Don't get me wrong, Lyra is an excellent resource. It's actually insane, both the quality and quantity of systems and solutions made freely available to UE devs in just this one project. That said, it is also very intimidating opening up Lyra for the first time as a new developer. Over time, I've been able to understand more about Lyra's designs as I've worked directly with the engine and encountered the problems that Lyra attempts to solve. The animation system, however, still looked very foreign to me, so I hit the YouTubes to find some tutorials, but the information was sparse and what exists is spread out in long tutorial playlists. Instead, I jumped right into Lyra and went circle back to some of these videos after getting my hands dirty a bit. I won't go into a full tutorial here. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments, but I will quickly go through the Lyra animation system and what I took from it. The first thing to note is that the functionality is spread out across multiple animation instances via animation layers. You can link these animation layers to the main animation instance, allowing for modularity. This solves my weapon scalability issues, as I no longer need all the weapon animations loaded into memory at once from one anim instance, and can instead link the weapon specific instance at runtime. This can be done via the link anim class layers node, which takes your mesh as a target, and then you can pass in the animation instance for the weapon specific animation layer or whatever you need in your game. I do this when the players are spawned with their default weapons, and also when they switch weapon sets. The next curveball Lyra throws at us is the lack of, well, anything in their event graph. Instead, they make use of the blueprint thread safe update animation function. This is a nice way to pull data and update your animation properties and make those properties available to your linked animation layers through a special node called property access. Although one problem I've had is that sometimes it takes longer than expected for these properties to update. I'm not sure if this is due to the thread safety mechanisms they have in place, some configuration, or some bad implementation on my end. Another pattern that I like from Lyra is their use of the onBecomeRelevant and onUpdate function bindings on sequence evaluators. Typically, this is where you'd set up your animation state, such as choosing which animation sequences to play, and then advance your animation in time, or using another new swanky node, such as the distance matching nodes. Basically, these manipulate the play rate of your animations based on distance values to better line up your animations to your character's momentum. To enable these nodes, you may need to install the Animation Locomotion library plugin. Lastly, there are the orientation, stride, and slope warping nodes, which help prevent things like foot sliding when your locomotion animation doesn't line up perfectly with your character velocity or with uneven terrain. They do require root motion, which was another change from how my previous locomotion animations were working. And then there's leg IK and foot placement, more nifty nodes that are pretty quick to add. They also have the added benefit of solving aim offsetting for me, as the main problem was that the legs were getting rotated off the ground. I should still add some aim offset eventually, but for now these nodes work fine. The plugins you may need for this are the animation warping library and the animation modifier library. We didn't talk about animation modifiers, but they're another useful feature used throughout Lyra's animation system. As you can see, our list of new tools has gotten quite long, and this is just the engine side. There are still a set of new locomotion animations to create within Cascadeur to handle the additional states within our new system, such as pivots, run starts, and run stops. This comes out to a total of 9 animations just for locomotion, which I've got keyframed up and implemented to start testing the system as a whole, but they still need a lot of polishing. To help keep all my animations cohesive, I created a list of keywords to help drive their design. These were primitive, raw, derpy, strong, and weighty. Putting all these together, I'm likely to get something that is truly cursed. But at least it'll be cohesive. That's it for this devlog. With 2025 right around the corner, I'm super excited to bring this game to players sometime in the new year. And now with the new animation system mostly in place, I'll be grinding on animation work to finish the new locomotion animations and the new combat animations for each weapon. My happy place is designing and implementing the combat abilities, and while it's taken longer than planned to get there, I'm glad to be getting to that point soon. After all, especially in a game like this, it'll all come down to the combat. With that, I offer a happy holidays, thanks for watching, and you all stay slothy.